What's up, everyone? The Speed Chess Championship is over. I am at the airport right now, immediately after finishing commentary for that one. I'm on my way to Budapest for the Chess Olympiad, so that's exciting. I have some time before my plane departs, so I figured I would record my unfiltered, let's say, thoughts about the just concluded Speed Chess Championships. Now, let's start with the semifinals. We had a couple of matches, obviously, Speed Chess Championships, 4 players, very good, all of them, especially in the online sphere. I mean, obviously, Hikaru, Firouzja, Alireza, and Magnus are all very well established. Hans still has a ways to go, but definitely still climbing. And obviously, he's been climbing the last few months during classical chess, but also he's been playing quite good rapid and blitz chess. So it was very intriguing. It was an intriguing field with 4 players, very intriguing matchups, and to be honest, there were a lot of questions that were not easy to answer without having the information of seeing them play. So let's unpack what we've seen over the weekend in Paris. We're going to start with Hans versus Magnus. Obviously, the match that a lot of people were expecting. These 2 players haven't met since 2022, at least not in an official setting. They've met a few times in Title Tuesdays, but obviously the Title Tuesdays are not really conclusive. And everybody had questions. How is Magnus going to handle the pressure? Is Hans, because he was already sort of hinting at that idea of breaking Magnus, will Hans actually break Magnus? Well, the question was answered, and he did not break him, not in the slightest. And to be honest, it would have taken a completely different Magnus to not rise to the expectation. Magnus has been rising to the expectation in every single tournament and every single match and every single challenge that he's faced throughout his career. He has risen to the challenge, emotionally stable, psychologically very, very strong, perhaps the strongest player in terms of psychology. So I didn't, unless something very special happened, I couldn't envision a world in which Hans would be able to inflict any sort of damage, psychological, over the board, in order to break Magnus. And of course, that didn't happen. As soon as the match started, more or less, we kind of understood very early on that Magnus is just a level up, a level higher than Magnus, than Hans. He won the 5+1 pretty convincingly, and he actually maintained that lead all the way until the bullet. A positive for Hans would be that he played quite well in the 3+1 and 1+1. I was expecting him to collapse more in 3+1 and 1+1, but he didn't. He held his own. There were a few scrambles in which he defended quite well, and that was impressive to see. He was under pressure for the majority of the games, but he had a couple of games in which he defended very accurately. So kudos to him for that one. That's a positive that Hans can take. For Magnus, obviously, once he took a 5-point lead, he kind of understood that the match is over. He was still trying to pile up the wins, and he managed to do so in bullet. He got up to a difference of 10 points, but then towards the end, he kind of relaxed a little bit, lost actually quite a few in a row, but the match was already over at that point. So Magnus goes on to the finals. Hans goes to the 3rd place match. The match for 3rd place, which was happening the next day, in which he was meeting the loser between Hikaru and Alireza. Now, this was a very intriguing match. To be honest, it was probably the match that a lot of people were seeing to be as close as possible. I gave it, if you watch the video that we recorded with Fabi, I gave Alireza actually a 55 to 45% chance. Fabi took 50-50, a coin toss, which made a lot of sense. Again, Alireza was coming with momentum. He Hikaru quite a few times. He knows Hikaru's strength. He faced him in this format, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So definitely this was something that we kind of understood Alireza is ready for. And he proved that he is. I would say precision-wise, this was the most precise I've seen Alireza in a long time, and that says a lot because he's had an absolutely tremendous year. He's been winning tournament after tournament. He won St. Louis Rapid and Blitz. He won the Sinquefield Cup. He was winning tournament after tournament against the best chess players on the planet, and a lot of people were expecting him to continue. But at the same time, you're playing against Hikaru, who's been the king of the Speed Chess Championships format, which is a very special, very particular format. So, yeah, he was very impressive. Time scrambles, he was the one winning them. And whenever it was coming down to the last few seconds, whenever the board was getting messy, he was the one that pretty much 90% of the times was coming out on top. So obviously a well-deserved victory for Alireza. Hikaru even mentioned it on his own channels that, yeah, no, this was Alireza's match. He was the better player on that day. And Hikaru said a couple of very interesting things. He was mentioning, you know, the fact that perhaps he's not in his prime anymore. He was touching upon the subject of getting older in the chess world. And that, you know, it felt very genuine from Hikaru. It's an interesting idea. What would have happened if Alireza was playing Hikaru when he was 25 years of age? That could have been a completely different match. I guess we will never know. But that put, obviously, Hans and Hikaru on a collision course. Obviously, a lot of people know what happened between Hans, Magnus, Chess.com, Chess24, and Hikaru. He was a named party in the lawsuit. So, you know, there was some tension. They don't like each other. The two players definitely do not like each other. And a lot of people, once again, seeing Hikaru pretty much get outplayed by Alireza, they were expecting somewhat of a competitive match. There were still questions to be answered. Lo and behold, we go on Saturday, and it's an absolute massacre. Hikaru just wins pretty much every single portion. Started off, I believe it was 5-2 in the 5+1 going into the last final of games, and then Hans in fact managed to win 2 games in a row. That felt like the momentum is coming back to him, but entering the 3+1, I mean, it was an absolute masterclass from Hikaru. He played well. He spotted everything much better, much faster than Hans, and to be honest, he never let go of the pressure. Never let go in the 3+1, never let go in the 1+1. So, took it outright. I think the final score was 21-9, which was an absolute trouncing. I don't remember the last time anybody scored more than 20 points. Obviously, it was this time. So, Hikaru takes the 3rd place, and it was interesting once again to hear the thoughts of the players. Obviously, Hans was a bit more humble this time. He wasn't. Look, he made some good points that he wanted this opportunity to test himself against the best chess players. Still, he has a lot to learn. Still, he has a lot to improve on. And that makes sense. We're going to have to wait and see whether this is the Hans that is the true self, the true Hans, or if it's just a persona that you put together when you're losing. Because we haven't seen Hans lose as much. He's been doing quite well in the open tournaments he was playing, in the matches that he was organizing. So this was a new type of challenge, PR challenge if you might. How are you going to react to the losses? Quite significant losses, because again, he was the one that was saying that he's going to basically retire the 2 players, Magnus and Hikaru. Well, he didn't retire any of them. Now, going in the finals, the super final between Magnus and Alireza, the 2 players that showed the best chess by far in the first couple of days. So, I actually did not know how to score this one. I didn't know how to predict this one before the match. I really thought that it's going to be a close match. Ali Reza once again was coming super hot out of wins after wins after wins. And Magnus, despite winning against Hans, I did feel he was a little bit shaky, and he said it in his interview as well. He said he was a bit tense. He wanted, and he was looking forward to the match against Ali Reza because he actually wanted to play that match. And he was expecting himself to be a bit more loose in that match, to play more freely, to play more flowy, if you mind. And he did. Whew. Oh my goodness, he actually did. Absolute domination from start to finish. Perhaps a bit of a hiccup. He started off with a victory in game 2, taking the lead first. Then Ali Reza came back, in fact, with back-to-back victories to take a 2.5 to 1.5 lead. But after that, it was pretty much match over. Magnus took over. Magnus never let go of the pressure. Magnus was finding every single detail in the position, and he was maximizing the potential of every single position that he's had. I think he went on a 9-1 run. Obviously, at that point, the match was pretty much closed. Everybody knew what the outcome would be. He finished off on a, I believe, 23.5 to 14.5, maybe less. Actually, no, I think it was less. 23.5 to, I think, less than 10, 7.5. Some ridiculous amount of points differential, and basically showed who's the boss. So yeah, a lot of questions have been answered in this last couple of days. Magnus is still the GOAT. Ali Reza is the king of the new generation, the prince of the new generation, if you might say so. He's definitely showing the best level in terms of the youngsters that are coming up, and especially when it comes to Rapid and Blitz, especially when it comes to online chess, which is obviously becoming a large part of the chess discussion. Now, another thing that I want to add to this whole experience is the show that was the Speed Chess Championships. It was a completely different format. This time we had the finals in person, the players not playing over the board, playing on their computer screens. But what impressed me the most was also the way they handled the spectators. I think that was really cool. The spectators were there, they were cheering after every single move, after every single game. You could hear the loud applause. It was really cool to see. It felt like finally chess is kind of going mainstream. And I think a lot of people that have watched the main show, that have watched some of the other streams as well, understood that this is new. We haven't seen this before. We haven't seen people cheering. I mean, 2019 Pro Chess League, you might say that that was one instance in which this was the case. I was there in San Francisco. It wasn't the same. I wasn't in Paris, but I could see it and I could hear. And I talked to people that were there as well, and they told me it was completely different. It's a very interesting development, and I hope that chess.com is going to continue. Maybe some other entities will continue with this type of format where players see each other face to face, perhaps play it over the board, perhaps play it over the computer as well, with people applauding, with people getting excited about the games. This is what matters, and like I said, I'm excited for the future. I think chess has a tremendous future, and yeah, that's more or less it. See you guys in Budapest. Cheers.